Well, a lot to get to after a busy weekend in the presidential race here. And again, as a snapshot, we are now just 98 days till Election Day. Well, let's get a reset of where the race stands. And for that, let's bring in our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman, with more. Andrew?
Well, Rich, we're starting to get some early polling taken during and after the Democratic convention last week. But take this with a grain of salt. It will really take another week or two to fully see past the bounces from the two conventions. But having said that, we've had 4 national polls come in since the Democrats wrapped up in Philadelphia. CNN has Clinton up 9, CBS has Clinton up 6. The Democratic-leaning public policy polling has Clinton up 5, and the LA Times USC poll has Trump up 4. So how's that impacted the poll averages? Well, before the Republican convention, Real Clear Politics had Clinton up a little more than 3 points. Now, after the GOP gathered in Cleveland, Trump got a bounce and was up just over 1 point. And today, after the Democratic convention, Clinton is back up a little more than 2 points. Not quite regaining her lead from before the conventions, but we expect new polls in the coming days that will likely increase her lead to where it was before the conventions, if not higher. But of course, presidential elections are won and lost on the state level, and a set of 8 swing states will help determine who becomes the next president. And those states are mostly good news for Hillary Clinton. She leads by less than a point in Ohio, a lead that is shrinking slightly, but she's increasing her 4-point lead in Pennsylvania. Trump holds a margin of error lead in Florida, and that is shrinking. Clinton leads in North Carolina, as well as in Virginia, Colorado, and Michigan, while Trump leads in Nevada, though there has not been a lot of recent polling in those final 5 states. Rich?
All right, Andrew, thank you. Let's bring in the rest of our panel. Jeannie Zaino, professor of political science at Iona College and a professor of campaign management at NYU, and Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. Well, Jeannie, I'll start with you. We always say he's been pretty Teflon here. He'll say something, and for some reason it just doesn't, maybe because positions are so set by people. But I gotta think, if you're in the military and you hear him going after a Gold Star mother or father, it can't, I said it before at the top, I don't know anyone who would say something like that. I really personally don't know someone who would say that. Does this have an impact, or you just add it to the list? Is it a little different?
It is different. And, you know, I keep saying that when Hillary Clinton, when that mother who lost her son in Benghazi and blamed Hillary Clinton for murdering her son at the Republican convention, you didn't hear Hillary Clinton come back and attack the mother. And that's what Donald Trump did to this family when he attacked both the mother and the father. It's obviously
so far less personal attack. He never claimed that Trump killed his kid. Right.
So a far less personal attack, and yet Trump is so thin-skinned that almost any of these things he just can't let it go. And of course, his campaign is now reeling because of how they've had to try to explain what he's saying and what he's doing. And Republicans like John McCain have come out and been very tough. But, you know, here's the thing. I'm looking at those polls that Andrew just talked about, and of course, they don't include yet, perhaps, this issue. But if I'm Hillary Clinton's campaign, I have got to be scratching my head and saying, here's a guy who called on Putin to look in my emails. Here's a guy who's attacking the mother of a fallen soldier, and yet he is within a margin of error in most of these swing states, if not slightly in the lead. And in these national polls, she should be running away with it. Anybody who compares the Democratic and Republican conventions agreed the Democrats did a fabulous job compared to Republicans, and yet she can't seem to get the movement and the traction she needs there yet. And of course, as Andrew mentioned, we don't know what's going to happen the next coming week with the polls. But if I'm Hillary Clinton, I got to be very, very nervous that all of these mistakes that he's making and all of these things that he's doing aren't resonating in the polls in a more substantial way for me.
I will, for the first time, I get the strategy of Clinton, which I wasn't sure really where it was. Obviously, you had to get through the primary, and there's a different strategy than for a general. But it's the day-to-day grind for the news cycle. It's not some, Hail Marys here or there. And their belief is, it's like if the better team, is playing a lesser opponent that might have jumped out to a lead or whatever else, they believe the talent in the end is going to win it. They believe they have a better organization, Dominic. They believe they have a better structure. They have a better ground game in all the states here. They have a more disciplined candidate, and they got a lot more money. They believe that what you're seeing from Trump, he's got 98 more days to keep making these kind of mistakes. And if anything, he shows zero contrition. He kept the story alive himself for 3 straight days. 3 straight days. He said what he said Friday, Saturday, then went on TV yesterday, and he said it, and he even went even further, right? So, don't you get the sense the clock's not in his favor?
Based on conventional wisdom, the clock is not in his favor. It's blunder after blunder. It's mistake after mistake. It's stepping on your message and not being on the attack because you're so much on the defensive. But going back to what the professor said at the end of her comment, it's still a long way away. I know it's 98 days. And this guy has 9 lives. That's the only way. I know what he's banking on. He's banking on the battle with a Muslim family is going to benefit him, which is disgusting.
But I don't know anyone.
That's what
Honestly,
he's banking
I know
on.
people hate her. This is a live picture of Hillary season an event in Omaha, Nebraska. And you see in the foreground there Warren Buffett. And she's been surrounded by business leaders talking about. Yes, and there will be others too. But you know, it's interesting, Andrew. You mentioned what some of the national leaders have said. McConnell, Ryan, McCain, they'll denounce the comments, but like we've seen so many times, they won't denounce the candidate. Although I'm starting to see other Republicans, Kelly Ayotte and others, basically saying he's not qualified to be president. I think you're going to hear more of it. And I know lately endorsements don't mean anything anymore, whatever else. But more and more people are comfortable coming out and saying, I'm a Republican, I'm not comfortable with this guy.
I think that depends on how endangered that person is with their constituency. So when you see John McCain or Kelly Ayotte come out and actually slam Trump, it's because it's not playing well with their voters. When you see McConnell or you see Ryan, they think that they can still hold the Senate and the House respectively without necessarily coming out and condemning Donald Trump. And frankly, I think a lot of Republicans will give them a certain amount of latitude because they are holding the party's banner and they are, waving the party flag. So it's sort of seen as part of their job. They have to support the party as best they can. But I just want to go back to the comments that Jeannie and Dominic were making. I really think this election is going to be about who loses it, not about who wins it. And so I think whoever the voters dislike more is going to lose this election. And the Trump stuff with the Khan family feels similar to the Mexican judge comments, but on a greater magnitude. Because the Mexican judge was just ruling in a case that Donald Trump was involved in. This is actually going after the parents of a dead soldier, and I don't think that plays well on any number of levels.
Especially
and I
compared
think
to the
bungled
speaker of
badly.
it, too. It's never, I can't think of any rationale where, condemning a family of a lost soldier is smart politics, but especially if you're Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump made fun of John McCain as a war hero, as I said off the top, and he took 4 different deferments and couldn't remember which foot kept him out of the military. So, to that point, though, Jeannie, there was a separate thing that on Sunday, in addition to talking about the Khan family, we played the clip at the beginning of the show, what he said about Ukraine. Now, we all laughed along. Remember when Perry couldn't name the 4 different departments he wanted to shut down in the federal government, and Sarah Palin, pick a story, right? I really legitimately mean this. I don't know what he actually knows. People think, oh, he's a smart guy. He does not know what's going on in the world. Every comment that he's had on geopolitical affairs, you think about it carefully. He's either completely wrong or he doesn't get any of the context of what's going on. And he's mentally incurious as to, there's going to be 3 debates. We'll get into that later about when and how and whatever, but you can get exposed with that stuff. And again, it comes down to me, whether you hate Hillary or not, do you really want to give this guy the launch codes?
Yeah, and he has proven time and time again he doesn't know, and he's unwilling to do his homework, or unable, but I would think it's unwilling. We really don't know. But you're absolutely right. He has made comments about the budget, for instance, and then had to walk those back. The comments about the Ukraine, he steps into it a lot and then has to walk them back. But, I think this is why, to your point about the debates, they're going to start to say, these debates are unfair, that they're designed to work against us, because they know darn well this is the first time he'll debate face-to-face with one other person as opposed to 17. And if you remember in those other debates, he was able to hide a little bit. He was able to step away. He wasn't pinned down, and he wasn't forced to answer.
And also, you weren't talking about foreign policy heavyweights here. You got the Secretary of State there.
But I don't think most voters know that Russia invaded eastern Ukraine.
But most
and I don't
voters
think
aren't asking to get the launch codes.
No, I understand that, but this is all how it plays with voters. And I think if they hear it from people like us, or if they see it on another cable network, they can take it with a grain of salt. Oh, that's just them giving Donald Trump a hard time again. I think you're hitting that soft spot where voters don't know what the facts are either. So I think he's somewhat inoculated. yes, I think the debates will be key, but even that depends on how she confronts him in it.
I don't know. I just think that there's a part here where people thought he might be a jerk, he might be whatever, but he's refreshing because he's authentic or whatever they said. But you can't have somebody who doesn't know what's going on as the I mean, that's scary. And also, it's not like he's got the party where he'll just populate, you know, people made jokes about George W. Bush, but you know he was going to have a cabinet about people who are lifers in terms of who knew Washington and everything else. And it's not even fair to compare President Bush to Trump right now in terms of policy command. But my point is, who's he going to surround himself with? Who? It was stunning. What I just saw this weekend to me on so many levels, not just how he treated the Khan family, but what he said about Ukraine and so many other things. He's still on Twitter, Dominic. Can somebody take away his Twitter account? Really, man, right?
It works for him.
Didn't work for him this weekend. If they took away his Twitter, he wouldn't have kept the story alive for 3 days. Nobody's going to say insulting a family who lost their son is helping.
I agree with you. Let's see what the polls say.
All right, fair enough. Coming up next. When Trump skipped the Fox News debate because he was mad at the network's coverage of him, well, people said, could that happen again in the general? Will he take his ball and go home and skip a presidential debate if he doesn't like the date or the time?